trouble in these waters.
We all go a little insane on this island.
You all know me.
Martin, it's all psychological.
Know how I earn a living.
Nobody cares because there is no proof. You catch them, you kill them, you leave them out there.
Get the mirror off my back so I don't have any more of this zone crap.
You've got that.
Welcome back to the Jaws Obsession, where we are here to share with you, prove to you, convince you, or remind you that Jaws is the greatest movie of all time. Thank you very much for coming back for episode 97. Welcome back to another episode, and a happy new year to you from the Jaws Obsession for this 2026, our first episode of the new year. I am your host, Ryan Dacco, and author of the Book of Quint, the prequel to Jaws that is now an Amazon bestseller for 10 months and running, the audiobook. Amazon Audible has it listed as it has gone up and down since its premiere of March of 2025. The audiobook for the Book of Quint has stayed in the top 100 in the world of historical thrillers. It has been interesting to see it go up and down. It always seems to have legs because of you, the listener, the Jaws fans that are out there that are rallying behind this audiobook, behind the story, learning more about Quint. It's exciting to see, and it just keeps staying in that top 100. So we are now 10 months and running as an Amazon Audible bestseller. Very exciting. Also, the audiobook is on Spotify, Apple, and Google Play Books if you want to go and listen to that. 14 hours, 23 minutes will give you a whole new perspective, and that's how we launched our Watch Jaws Again for the first time, 2025, now going into 2026 campaign, which is really interesting. We're working our way. This new year, we're going to have a big announcement. We're going to level up here, an evolution. We're working our way towards episode number 100. Number 100 is going to be the next phase of what we are doing here with an expanded Jaws universe. This is all part of the research that has been taking place now. I've been in research on this next project for over 2 years, and it just feels right. This is it feels like the right time to move ahead with this. And it's very exciting. And episode 100 will have more details on what to expect coming from the Jaws Obsession in 2026, going into 2027. But we have to get to work here because we're going to need 3 more minutes of Jaws, 3 more episodes in order to get to number 100. And we're going to keep plugging along 1 minute at a time using the Book of Quint and seeing how it changes our perspective, how it changes our viewing of Jaws. It's good to be back. We had quite the weather anomalies up here, buried in snow for a while, had a heavy workload, hard to get around to get these episodes recorded. So it's nice to be back and to actually have some time to keep chiseling away here and keep inching 1 foot at a time, moving up the mountain, getting towards the top. One of the great things was that we saw over at Edgartown Books, that the Book of Quint was number 3 bestseller on Martha's Vineyard for Edgartown Books in the year 2025. It was great to see that announcement made as they gave their final tallies, and we were right behind Jaws by Peter Benchley. So for the 50th anniversary, how special is that on the island, Martha's Vineyard, 50th anniversary of Jaws? We had the novel Jaws as the number 2 bestseller at Edgartown Books, and there's the Book of Quint as the number 3 bestseller in fiction at the bookstore in the heart of Edgartown where Jaws was filmed. What an accomplishment that is, and what a testament by the Jaws fans to rally behind the Book of Quint, saying that this Jaws prequel strikes the right chords and seems like that's the right tone that we would like to see happen with our movie that we think is the greatest of all time, Jaws, that never really got its Godfather 2 treatment. It never really had that backstory fleshed out like we saw in The Godfather 2 for Vito Corleone, and here's the Book of Quint. I think we can do that again. So that's what we're doing here, is we're just moving through, we're using the Book of Quint, and we're moving through Jaws 1 minute at a time. Let's just jump right into it. We're at minute number, the expanded Jaws universe, minute number 8 is where we are at. Why did I have 7 there? This would go to show you my state of mind here. Now we are in our minute number 8. We now have the last one was minute number 7. We ended up at with Martin Brody and Tom Cassidy on the beach on South Beach as they're going over the last sighting of Chrissie. They're looking for the missing Chrissie Watkins. One of the things I wanted to say before we move on, the last episode episode 96, minute number 7. When I broke down the Spielberg elements of the Columbo episode, noticed that it was very, very, very difficult. I had to re-edit that at least 3 times in order to get it somewhat palatable to be posted on YouTube because of the AI censors that trigger, they basically flag the video because of a copyright infringement using too much of the Columbo episode. So a lot of this times when I'm doing these episodes, there's a special formula that I'm trying to grasp, that to keep these episodes going, in order to make the video possible, I have to break it down into segments where it's almost less than 8 or 10 seconds at a time before I interject with a pause or I talk or speak over the film. And therefore, it allows it to pass those censors so I can then post the video. It only affects YouTube. If that does happen, like the last one, the unaltered, the unedited video will definitely be on Spotify, because Spotify now accepts videos. And if you go to the podcast over on Spotify, you actually can watch the video now of the Jaws obsession, and that will be the full video. So you can actually see the full Columbo episode breakdown over on Spotify, whereas on YouTube, I had to do a truncated version, and it skipped a lot of parts because they were triggering the copyright censors. Even though this episode and these episodes, I believe, are fair use because we are analyzing them. I do read the disclaimer at the end of every episode, and we are analyzing Jaws, and we are doing this as a study of Jaws. So it is not like we are posting Jaws and for viewing pleasure. We're actually doing a study here. So this falls into the fair use. It's just that it's impossible to get through sometimes to the AI censors that Universal Studios has set up around their properties, such as Columbo. So what happened was I went a little long watching Columbo while talking and playing those segments, and it wouldn't let me post those. So going forward, that's why it's really nice that we stick to these 1 minute at a time and these little small clips, because so far it has been letting me post those to YouTube. So for our YouTube viewers, if something does seem off, I'll usually drop down in the description. I'll put an asterisk there, and I'll say, hey, if you want to watch the full video, just go over to Spotify and you can actually see it over there. So there's always one way. We always have backups. We always have the videos are going to be posted. The links will be posted over at our show notes, over at our Telegram channel at JawsOB. That's where our show notes are going to be. And if you ever have any questions, you can always email me here at jawsob2025@gmail.com. So the YouTube channel, Jaws, all the YouTube channel, the links will all be found right there in the description of this broadcast, whatever platform you're listening or watching on. As always, I also invite you over to our Instagram at Book of Quint. Over at Instagram, that's exactly where all the action is taking place. We're seeing great engagement numbers, seeing a lot of high views on some of these videos. I will put shortened videos, highlight videos of points I'm trying to make up there, and a lot of discussion will take place over on Instagram in the comment section of those videos. Very exciting to see, and sometimes I'll actually bring some of those comments over into the show here, and that will let me answer some questions that might come up. So let's move ahead here. We have the next 3 minutes to get out here, so we're going to move ahead with episode 97, Expanded Jaws Universe, minute number 8. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of things going on here, trying to get to this episode 100 so we actually can rally around a new goal that we're going to set here for the Jaws obsession. It's going to be very exciting. Let's see if we can pull this off. The workload is just increasing ever so much. We have to solidify a date and time because we did do a time jump from the Brody kitchen. And as he left, Ellen and Sean Brody drives over to go meet Hendricks and Cassidy over at the beach. what time are we looking at here? So with that, we're going to incorporate, I have a Jaws expanded universe timeline that I've started here. And let's bring that over into here. So we talked about Jaws, the expanded universe timeline is what we're doing. If you go back to listen to the previous episodes, I don't have enough time to really go over all the different aspects of those episodes, but this is the highlights of what we're establishing here as a timeline down to the date and time level. So Friday, June 27, 1974, 5:08 a.m. was the Chrissie Watkins attack. And then we were at the Brody bedroom Friday, June 27, 1974 at 6:30 a.m. That's what we kind of decided with the sunrise, as well as a logical time for Chief to wake up. The one things that we usually do is we look out for clocks, and we look out for anything that can give us a solid date. And remember, we had the Brody, the tea towel kitchen calendar, the Jean Clabet tea towel kitchen calendar in 1974, giving us a year. But we've looked over at the clock here, and that time read 7:47 a.m. So we knew that was Friday, June 27th, 1974, 7:47 a.m. And then he says on the phone to Hendricks, to 15, 20 minutes, he will get down to South Beach. We showed the map of Amity that's included in the Book of Quint, and we showed how that Chief Brody could get down to South Beach there in about 15, 20-minute drive. So we have to remember when we are at South Beach, that let's say it took him about 20 minutes to get down there to finish putting his uniform on, get down there. It's not that we don't cut to right when he arrives. One of the things they talk about when you're writing scenes or when you're directing or filming, in order to make a proper pacing and tempo, you want to arrive late and you want to leave early. So you want to get down to the meat of the scene as soon as possible. So we never really see Chief Brody pull up and introduce himself to Cassidy, and Hendricks give him the rundown of the information he got from Cassidy. And then Hendricks obviously went ahead and started searching. So you have to factor in all those times added in. So when I factored in the logical time of Chief to arrive down there, but then all the small talk as we are now on the dunes looking around and Chief is walking with Cassidy, we're going to peg this around Friday, June 27th, 1974, about 8:35 a.m. So it's 8:35 in the morning is when we have Cassidy and Brody when we're introduced to Cassidy and we're on the beach with Brody, 8:35 a.m. It just seems like that would be a logical time for the 20-minute drive, 20-minute Chief Brody exiting the vehicle, Chief Brody exiting the house, getting down to South Beach, and then the introduction, small talk, and then the collecting of Chrissie's articles of clothing. And then when we arrive here, so 8:35 a.m. on that June 27th, on that Friday, June 27th, in 1974, is where we are at. So we're going to lock that in. We've already added that to our official Jaws timeline, our expanded universe timeline here. And this is exciting because this is the part of the research that I need for this next phase that we're going to get to. And that's going to be hinted at, and we're going to establish a layout in episode 100 of what's going to happen with that. So this is really interesting. So 8:35 a.m. is where we are at. Also, these times, they are going to let us get to understand the goings on of Amity Island, as well as the intricacies of what it's like for the Amity police, and understand some of the lines that come up later on, even in this minute. So let's move forward here. We have starting at 8 minutes.
Come on.
Okay. So we have them, Brody and Cassidy. They hear the whistle start going from Hendricks is blowing the whistle. I'm going to pause it on this frame at 8 minutes and 3 seconds. There's a lot of information in this frame that we have to look at here. The first one is we're going to look at the formation of the sand dunes here. These are the way the sand dunes are. They're very pitch and roll. There's a lot of different formations and steep drops. So we saw how Cassidy stumbled down one earlier in the when he was with Chrissie, and that is also Chief Brody did the little mini stumble in the last minute. because they're kind of steep here. Now, I want everybody to take a look way in the back here. We're going to have to blow it up and look at this, but you can see Hendricks standing on top of one of these outcroppings, these dune outcroppings right here. And I also want to look at the lay of the land. See this point that's coming down here? That's one of the points. And then there's going to be this, you can see the land curves around, and that's the bay that I wanted to show. Okay, let's bring that up right now. Let's go back to the map of Amity. We're in this area right here, and I'm going to blow it up a little bit right here. So if we go in, this is Amity Island. So we're going to go to our map here. This is included in the appendix for the Book of Quint. But what we have here is, see, we have these 2 points. These are what we're talking about. We're kind of in this area right here. And if we look at, let me get this out of the way here. If we look at this point that he's on, and the water kind of goes back there, and then it comes to another point right here. This would be that kind of middle section right here. Okay, so we kind of look at these are the area. This is the area. I know it's not to scale. I wish I had a little bit more time, but see, there's this hook that comes in here. This is kind of where Chrissie went into the water. So Hendricks is like over here, and they came over here, and we have a lot of stuff going on. So that's the area. This is very, very important, because this is going to come back and play a significant factor to bookend the movie in the 123rd minute. And I want everybody to focus on that, because this is very important. It's very important to appreciate Jaws in this level, in the craftsmanship, when this map is factored in. That's why the Book of Quint is very important as an addendum to the film, because we're right in here, and we're going to keep that in mind, because it's going to come to a great realization later on in the movie. But for now, that's kind of where Chrissie went in, where Chrissie got attacked. We also have to look at, and remember, there's a background landmass right back in here, and that's what we're looking at right here, that background landmass that's right here. That's the hook, okay? So we need to know that Amity just keeps going. Its South Beach is very long. It goes along the base of the island. But what I want to say is that when we look at the sand dune height in the back, it's very similar to right here where we have the lifeguard chair. And I want to say that this one in the back is going to almost mimic this sand dune right here. So we are not allowed to see the Chrissie remains, and we are not allowed to see exactly what Chief Brody and Cassidy are looking at and what Hendricks found. But this frame right here will allow us to see that if you look at where the water, this is low tide, okay, because you can see low tide, these are the rocks right here. You can see that the tide obviously has been receding. High tide mark comes all the way up here. Okay, see all this kind of smoothed out sand? That high tide was up in here. So you can almost imagine that her body is in this little cluster way in the back, right in there. There'd be a cluster of weeds, but it's right underneath like a taller sand dune. Okay, remember, we're at 8 minutes and 3 seconds. If everybody's watching, for those that are only listening, I'm describing what we're looking at when we see Brody and Cassidy's back, and we see Hendricks way in the background. But there's the height of the sand dune is what is going to be indicated when we're going to see a crab drop from the top of the frame onto the cluster of crabs and seaweed, and that is Chrissie's remains. That crab is dropping down because we're looking at almost a vertical piece of sand and dune. That's what's way in the back here. So that's what Chrissie is going to be washed up on. Her remains are going to be washed up onto this. She's not going to be on a flat piece of land, flat piece of beach like this, because this is all low tide. The high tide would have pushed her remains right up here. What I also find interesting is that this is where she kind of went into the water where we are right now. Because of the high tide, the currents took her down a ways and then deposited her remains right in there. It's all very interesting. This all adds up to even the screenplay. The screenplay talks about, so yeah, even if we pull the screenplay up here, this would be more of the final version of the screenplay. Remember, the final version of the screenplay, remember Carl Gottlieb always said that the screenplay that we know for Jaws there was never really a shooting script. It was just a collection of sides. So a lot of this, I've noticed, that is taken the Peter Benchley screenplay that he turned into Zanuck and Brown. Some of the descriptions are taken right from that, but then there's things that are added in because as they got on location, things changed. The shark wasn't working, so scenes had to be modified in order to do that. But what we have here is it says in scene 16, exterior Amity Beach, which we know as the South Beach. It says 3 small figures in the landscape walking the beach. The surf is rough and there is seafloor debris strewn about from the receding tide. So we know that it had to be a receding tide, as in it's going down to low tide. Remember, we are only about 3 hours from peak high tide, because that's when we saw the Chrissie attack was at 5:08 a.m. So we are now 3.5 hours later after high tide. So that makes sense. It all makes sense here. And that's what I want to say, is that if we look at this dune, not only do we get a scale, but imagine Brody standing here with Cassidy looking down the way. He's going to be looking at the cluster, almost like this little cluster right here. That is very similar to what they're going to be looking at down there. So if you want a visual, this frame will give you a visual of what they're looking at down there. They're not looking at an open beach. They're actually looking at the outcropping of a dune that you actually see Hendricks standing on. This frame is also very important because look at the footsteps, okay? Now we all know that this is obvious, that these are footsteps from prior takes, okay? When we step outside, when we step into the making of Jaws, we know that these are prior takes, okay? Let's... Come
on.
Okay, so you see this cluster of footprints and all that. So obviously these were made by Roy Scheider and Jonathan Filley, and maybe even Steven Spielberg and and different members of the crew, as they were taking various takes and going out there and discussing camera angles and all that. They did have people with rakes and brooms to smooth the sand out, but there's only so much you can do. Okay, so what I also want to say here now is that this is the beauty of what we do here on the Jaws Obsession, and the beauty of the Book of Quint is that the way I see Jaws, and the way that when I have watched Jaws in the past, I watch Jaws as it's like these are clues that are telling a story. It's telling a bigger story. Part of the problem that we've had as Jaws fans is we are so enamored with the making of Jaws that it clouds our enjoyment of this beautiful movie. And if you watch some of these little mini imperfections, what Bob Ross would say, there are no mistakes, there's only happy accidents. And Jaws is a collection of happy accidents because it all works. Now, what I am doing here is I'm building clues to actually show there's another story that's happening. There's a bigger picture going on. Now, can we derive from this is what we can derive is that there were other people on this beach. Okay, there were other footsteps. These footsteps were made by another individual at an earlier time. Okay, we can say that maybe right here it could have been Martin Brody and walked with Hendricks, and then Martin Brody walked back, okay, and went to go meet Cassidy while Hendricks kept walking. You can see the footsteps kind of trail up and go in between the dunes. Maybe Hendricks took the overhead view to walk on top of the dunes, and he walked over all the way down, about 100 yards down the way. But there are still these other little mini footprints here. So it means that there was someone else was around, looking around for something, and that I am interested in that story. Who could have been on this beach that early in the morning before Martin and Hendricks and Cassidy came back to look for Chrissie? I find it fascinating. It also could have been that Cassidy walked around. He could have walked around as he woke up and walked around and said, "Where is Chrissie?" Looked around and then came back. But simple fact is that we do have more than enough footprints here to show that there was other foot traffic at this beach. Keep that in mind because that's part of the notes that's going into the whole research, the whole file. This is showing a bigger picture. There's a bigger story here. Fascinating to me that that's the interpretation, is that when you watch this, if you interpret these clues, Jaws is actually revealing itself to you. And it's very interesting, and I'm excited to be here. We're on the cutting edge of something big here. I just know it. I know it, and it's truly special, and it's an honor to be here. So let's continue on. We're going to continue on here. Now we're going to go to the introduction of Deputy Hendricks, played by the wonderful Jeffrey Kramer, actor Jeffrey Kramer. Now this is the this is the permanent deputy that works with Chief Brody with the Amity Police Department. It's explained later on that there's summer deputies will come on an extra help as the population grows on Amity Island for the summer hours, but for year round, it's just Chief Brody as the chief of police and Deputy Hendricks. There's a lot going on here, and that I want to keep going because this is the reverse angle of what we just saw. So let's run this back again.
For the summer? Come on.
They're running away from the camera, and now we're going to cut to the reverse angle. We're going to pause it right there at 8 minutes and 4 seconds, maybe 8 minutes and 5 seconds. Yeah, that's what my notes have. So now we see the one dune way down back there with the lifeguard chair on it. And here's the dune that we saw in the background before that Hendricks is standing on. The reverse angle is going to show us the high tide line. The high tide line comes way up into here, maybe even into here, okay? That this is more of regular sand here. But you can see the high tide line comes way up into here, so it's going to cut way down. And it's very indicative of where Chrissie is. It's actually very true. It's very true to where her body would be after high tide and the tide recedes, is that the heavier items would be left on the shore. The mystery footsteps. We still have some mystery footsteps here, right in here and right in here. I think Hendricks would have taken this path around the beach and then came up here and then climbed up high. It just doesn't seem to me that he would have came this way, or at least there's also some coming from the water. So there was other foot traffic here. That's undeniable, and there's evidence that Jaws is telling us that. So it's very interesting. Could someone have actually put their eyes on Chrissie before all of this happened? Fascinating. Wonder what that could be. So now we have Hendricks on top of the dune. We're going to point over to the changing cabanas right here in the background. Very similar to what we see at the town beach, Amity Town Beach, the changing rooms there behind Martin Brody, for the Alex Kittner attack scene, the famous there. This is not the same beach, and sometimes we might be confused that we see these and we think that, but there isn't a gazebo here, there isn't anything here, and this is South Beach. This is further down the island than the Amity Town Beach. Let's bring that map back here. Okay, as we zoom out, we're going to say that here's where we are here. This is the South Beach cabanas, would be right in here. Okay, and way over here is the pond. That is good. This little stretch right here is where there's a road here. There's a bridge. This is the Jaws bridge right here. Another bridge that we see in Jaws 2. And this is the this is the southern route that goes here to get back to town. But this would be where the Alex Kittner attack would be right in here. These were the two long rock jetties that come out here. And that's where that's what we're talking about, is the Alex Kittner attack is right over in here, where they'll also have changing cabanas as well. So over here is another public beach access, obviously, but also this is where some bathers would collect after the 4th of July. I just really like how this gives the lay of the land on Amity Island. You actually see a saltwater pond back here that I didn't include on my map, but you actually can see different intricacies here. One thing to know is we look at this dune fencing. This dune fencing, we talked a lot about it in the last 2 minutes, but we're going to talk about it even more now, because here we're going to see dune fencing that has seriously been vandalized. Okay, they're seriously vandalized, and we're also going to see it in the next couple of frames. We have to look at how is this dune fencing is relatively new, because look at the wire is not rusted. Okay, so it's silver wire. It's also been broken at very odd areas. Okay, also the steel has been bent, which is odd, like someone was kicking at it or vandalizing it. These are all shattered. Some spokes are missing. Some slatting is missing. You can see the missing rings here. Also, if you look, let's look at the Chrissie scene again. Let's go back. We're at 805. Remember, we're just looking at Hendricks's legs here. But if we're going to go back to the Chrissie scene, I want to look at, this is kind of where you look at, this is what dune fencing should look like, okay? Actual dune fencing is going to be about 4 wires high. You have these, here you have 1, 2, 3, 4 wires high. And look at how, even though it's weathered and it's beaten and it's kind of flopped over and none of that, they're all relatively the same height, right? It's a higher fencing, and that they called it winter fencing. Okay, and that's the island term for it. I use the term dune fencing.
What's your name again?
But watch when she runs along it, you're going to see a lot of it. It's very even.
Swimming.
Some get broken up later on, but look at the 1, 2, 3, 4 wires high. Okay.
Slow down. I'm not drunk.
Okay.
Slow down.
So we get into some of this other areas, but relatively, you might have a couple that are beaten down over time and they got worn down. But really, these are kind of high here and relatively the same height. When we get back to this scene over at South Beach, okay, now we're looking at, okay, so this is South Beach. When we get back to this scene, even though we're still at South Beach, remember the Chrissie fencing is way down there. But we get to here, the fencing is all wrecked and it's all different heights and bent over. So clearly someone was doing a number on it. Now, so let's also go, when they go to the next frame, when Martin Brody and Cassidy are running up, we're going to pause that right there at 8 minutes and 14 seconds. We're going to look at only about 2 wires high. This is the lower wire right here, and there's the second wire. Where's the other 2 wires? The Chrissie fencing was 4 wires high, so we're only 2 wires high here. So also, clearly, no rust on the fencing, okay? That is an indication when dune fencing is over, at least for a season, when it shows significant weather wear, it's going to turn brown. That wire is going to be rusted brown. Also, when you look at these brakes are kind of clean. If you look at this one right here, you're going to see the wood is not weathered. Okay, that's a clean brake. That's fresh wood right there. Okay, one even back here over Hendricks' shoulder here, it's a clean brake. There's no gray wood. Okay. I know that going forward, yeah, there isn't any gray wood. And same when we first got introduced to Hendricks here. Let's get in here. Right here. You see there's a little section here that the gray wood it hasn't seasoned out yet, that the salt water has not aged the wood. So this is relatively new, that whoever was vandalizing this fence was kind of this week, earlier in the week, that they were really doing a number on this wood here. Now, I want to differentiate, because we did say that this was the fencing is deliberately placed there at the direction of Spielberg in the set design. I did find more introduction and more evidence of that over here with Jaws Memories from Martha's Vineyard by Matt Taylor. We have an inset here. Okay, it's an amazing book. It's got a lot of facts here. It goes back to May 2nd, 1974, when they were filming this. But there's an inset here, and it says Joe Alves, as the set designer, Joe Alves, said he personally planted the snow fences on the beach at Katama. He had done the job beautifully. They looked 100 years old, buried in the shifting dunes. He had approached the whole project as a beach sculpture and had done all the work himself in the way of an artist. The camera was set in place on the dolly, controlled and moved by two men at the rear, directed with decisive skill by the cameraman Bill Butler, who also collaborated with Spielberg. The two men would take turns checking out each camera angle until both were satisfied. Quiet, please, action. The scene began again. So we know that Joe Alves was on the beach creating this fencing. We had a comment. We had a comment from Marty Milner. Remember, construction foreman Marty Milner, who appeared on Jaws Obsession episode number 50, but also wrote the foreword for the special edition of the Book of Quint, that the hardcover special edition that was on sale all summer over at Edgartown Books. So over at the YouTube page for episode 96, when we went over the fencing here, which is very interesting, he says, he says, if you look at in the latest release of Jaws Memories of Martha's Vineyard, you will see there's a picture in there of me and Kevin Pike busting up the fencing in one of the beach scenes. Locally, this fence is called snow fencing, and is frequently used to prevent drifting snow as well as to stop the sand from blowing off of the dunes and off of the beaches. We also made a number of section of fence for broken fence shots. So the fence thing was definitely intentional, Marty Milner. So that was Marty Milner chiming in and backing up the theory of the Spielberg fencing theory that we were establishing on the Jaws Obsession over the last 2 minutes, the last two episodes, the last 2 minutes. But so what that's telling us, and there is information from Kevin Pike over on page 39 of Memories of Martha's Vineyard, and he talks about he was waiting pretty much all morning. Then they said, Kevin, come on out with the Hudson. I grabbed the spray gun and ran onto the beach as quick as I could. They were in the middle of shooting the discovery of the severed arm with the crabs. As soon as I stepped onto the sand, crew members began shouting at me, don't walk on the track, don't walk on the track, walk here, not there, because they didn't want footsteps showing. Ward came over and then told me what was happening. Right behind Roy Scheider was a piece of raw wood on the fence that Joe Alves wanted toned down a little bit. After a moment, Joe Alves said, okay, that's good, Kevin, thank you. So what happened is that that we're getting confirmation here that this was dune fencing that was placed there by the production, because Spielberg was because the fencing does play a major role in communicating and setting the tone through this first 15 minutes of Jaws. But what Kevin Pike was just basically saying was they were very much looking at painting this wood to not make it look as raw, to actually so it stood out from the sand, and that's where the spray gun was coming in. But some of the pieces that you see here were still a little fresh, and it shows you that they weren't aged quite enough. Now, one could say this was a missed opportunity, but I see this as a happy accident. A happy accident in that it's telling more to the story. That could this be possible, that the vandalizing of this fences is related to the vandalizing of the picket fence that we see, the picket fences that we see Polly talking about, that the Amity police are getting calls from the new karate school, complaints about the new karate school, the 9-year-olds karateing picket fences. Could those 9-year-olds have been out here practicing their karate moves earlier in the week, and then they moved towards town with their destructive abilities? So remember, raw wood, fresh vandalism, broken fences, only 2 wires up. That means a bunch of other wire. The other 2 wires, the real fencing is about this high, would have been covered all that. And that's all missing now. So somebody was out there having a lot of fun. Someone had fun, as Jeremy Irons would say in Die Hard with a Vengeance. And that's just what was happening. Somebody was having fun out here. And this is all interconnected. These storylines kind of intertwine. This is a small little hint of what we are doing here, is that in the expanded Jaws universe, is that there is a purpose, there is a story that Jaws is telling us. We just haven't learned about it yet. That's what's exciting here. So we have Martin Brody and Cassidy run up. We have Hendricks is kneeling down. Let's look at the Amity police uniform. We have the Amity police badge from earlier. You see a close-up of it earlier. The Amity police badge on his jacket, on the blue jacket. We have the Amity police patch. This is very interesting because our Martin Brody is wearing the khaki outfit, the khaki jacket, the tan colored jacket, and then we see him later on in the darker jacket. So Amity police have almost a day and night wear, or have different uniform schemes that they're wearing. Now later on, we are also going to see other deputies in the similar outfits and similar jackets, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are employed in Amity. Remember that there are other islands like Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, of course Cape Cod, where police agencies and the police forces were considerably larger than Amity because they have a larger population. They would be able to spare a couple deputies to come out and help in time of need. That is what we are going to be looking at later on. That's going to answer some of the things. They just throw on the Amity police jacket, and that there are basically they're working on the island for that day. The look around from Cassidy here at 8:20. Let's watch this a little bit. Okay, Martin Brody's zeroed in on what he thinks is going on here, and Cassidy's looking around. Now, I always saw this as Jonathan Filley. He was maybe he had taken direction from Steven Spielberg. The cluster of human debris is what you're going to be seeing. It's inhuman in its condition. It's covered in crabs and seaweed, so it's going to be unrecognizable. Martin Brody, coming from New York City, has seen bodies before. He's used to this. I don't want to say he's used to it, but he has seen his share of bodies in compromising situations and in positions and in states of decay. So he immediately zeroes in. I really like how this plays out. He immediately zeroes in on what he believes is Chrissie Watkins, while the young college student, Cassidy, is staring around going, What's all the commotion? I just see nothing but seaweed and beach. Okay, we also have in the book, we never see this, but Hendricks already threw up. He vomited at the sight of seeing Chrissie, so that's why he's sick at this time and weak, and he's fallen to his knees because he is not used to that, and clearly neither is Cassidy. Let's also notice what Martin Brody is holding. He's holding Chrissie's purse, which we have established in the last minute as coming from the Wampanoag Indian tribe that exists over on Martha's Vineyard and parts of Cape Cod, as well as Nantucket. So she has the Wampanoag Indian tribe purse, and he's holding Chrissie's clothes here as he moves forward here. And now we're going to go and we're going to play this further, 8:25. We're going to come to Chrissie's remains at 8 minutes and 30 seconds into the movie. I want to go back. Okay. Let's run this back a few times. Watch the crab. See how the crab falls from the top? So when they were filming this, they did have a lady with her hand in cold water, an actress with her hand in cold water. I think I have her name here. Go back to our trusty memories of Martha's Vineyard. We have, her name is the arm of Kelly House waitress Andrea Muir serves as the victim's severed limb. Wrapped in a sleeping bag, Muir warms herself between takes. So we have Andrea Muir has her arm that was supposed to be Chrissie Watkins' severed limb, but I don't think that ever made it into theirs because I see the arm that was her her severed limb was the right one, but we're seeing the left one here. We're seeing the left hand of Chrissie Watkins. So I believe that that maybe they felt that that was too gruesome, so they left that out of the final cut. But they did have a lady there with her arm in cold water to make it look very pruned and lifeless, with the color drained out of it. This scene right here, I wanted to focus on that. Remember that crab that drops from the sky there? If you can think about it, we are now on the, if our viewpoint is from that high sand dune looking out at the water, and that is what he is looking at. So Martin is going to step in here into frame, and we're going to see the crabs actually come to life. They had to drop warm water onto the crabs because all the crabs were, it was very cold out there. The temperature dropped considerably. It was May 2nd, and it was still very frigid. So the crabs were holding very still. So when they sprinkled hot water on them, they actually came to life. That's how they got them to move around like this. But that one that drops from the top there, that can be explained as that we are now on the back wall of that high dune that we saw Hendricks standing on. And that's where the crabs are coming from. They're all over. There's a cluster over above our head, above our vantage point right now. This is quite, as the realm of this movie goes, is that the implied gore here is quite impressive, because we have obviously her hair. This is Chrissie's hair, and it's tangled up in the crabs, as well as her left arm, which we know is severed later on from the autopsy scene. But what we also have to see here is we can see from the screenplay over here. So in the screenplay here on scene 18, master angle, the sand dune. So it's talking about a sand dune. Deputy Hendricks on his hands and knees, looking white as a sheet. Brody tells Cassie to wait at the foot of the dune and ventures up. Hendricks stops him with a wave off, saying something at the same time. Brody nods understanding and steps up cautiously and looks down. He adjusts his glasses, trying to make sense of what he is looking at. Whatever he sees has a marked effect on his entire physique, kicking out with his foot. Brody sends dozens of angry horseshoe crabs into an escape frenzy, and they boil over the top of the dune and down its slopes. Cassidy takes a few uneasy steps backwards when Brody waves him over. Let's say there's a deleted scene where he says you have to identify the body. We played that in the last one, in the last minute number 7, when we were talking about the fencing. I'm not going to get back to that here. It's an unneeded scene, and but this is the section of the script that it calls for. But what's very interesting here is you have to look at this section right here, section 18A, quick sharp cut. Chrissie's remains incomplete from the chest down, horribly bitten. Note, see Hooper's dialogue in scene 91 for complete description of the corpse. So remember way back when on April 1st, 2022, episode 15, CSI Amity Island, we went over the entire autopsy scene that's going to be played later on that we're going to have to get to with Matt Hooper. But the special guest we brought on the show was Dr. Maria Iannolo. And that was, and John Tedder also appeared. But Dr. Maria, she was able to give us, we went line by line on the autopsy scene, exactly what they're looking at in those 2 bins in the autopsy room. But that is also what they're going to be looking at here as well. Torso severed in mid-thorax, eviscerated with no major organs remaining. May I have a drink of water? Right arm severed above the elbow with massive tissue loss from upper musculature. Portions of denuded bone remaining. Did you notify Coast Guard? Please don't smoke. With minor post-mortem lacerations and abrasions, bite marks indicate typical non-frenzy feeding pattern, large squali. It says left arm, head, shoulders, sternum, and portions of rib cage intact. So the left, so if you looked at this, would be, if we're going to get maybe a little bit graphic, what they're looking down at is we're looking at the upper torso of Chrissy. So her head obviously is here because this is where her hair is. And maybe she is, that this left arm is severed, but it's also with the cluster of debris as well. So that's kind of what they're looking at. Is we went over that with Dr. Maria, and she described exactly what we were looking at here. Because we're not really looking at something that it looks human because it's so mangled and compressed, but also this won't be easy to look at as well as it won't be easily identified. What's going on? So we have so we have to look at Chrissie is that the collection of the what we do believe is could there have been more of a scene here? Could they have actually had more? I think they wanted to, and I don't know if they ever got around to it. In all the notes I've read, I don't see them having an actual corpse or Susan Backlinie painted up or made to look like that she is washed up on the beach. So we thought we had photographic evidence, but that we can't talk about if that was conclusive or not. So as far as we're concerned, is that we just had the arm model, the one lady that had her hand there for Chrissie Watkins' hand, and then and this scene right here. So I don't think that there is any other cutaway scenes here in all our research. But this is a very, very intricate part in the movie. I really want everybody to understand that Chrissie Watkins, she is the key to an expanded Jaws universe. And it's in so many ways. It's very important. Her character has just stood out to me as such a major player. It all starts with her and what happens to her. So we have so many more questions that we want to get answered. But when we look at this, we have to focus on her left hand here. She has these rings here, and these rings are made by a jeweler that is on Martha's Vineyard. In fact, they actually had a reproduction of these rings that were made when for the 50th anniversary. So you actually could buy these rings again. But one of the things that's very apparent is on her left hand is that there is no ring. So she was not engaged or not married. That is telling us more about her history. And that's just more clues that we add into the file when we do these characterization studies of these characters in Jaws. No ring on the left hand, because in the United States that's where typically women would wear, that's where they will wear the engagement ring, and then the wedding ring goes on your left ring finger. Chrissie is not wearing that here. So that tells us more about her character, more clues to drawing a picture here. It's very sad. It's very sad. It's a very solemn thing. And we're not going to see these remains ever. And only the left arm is going to be shown in a graphic depiction when Hooper handles the left arm later on. But there's clearly more than just an arm here. And that's explained later on by Matt Hooper. Let's move on. This is 8:31. We're going to pause here with Martin Brody looking. I mean, here's the big dune. Here's the dune here. And we don't know the relation, how much, where he is, how high the dune is. Is Chrissie over here? Is she down right below him? It's left up to interpretation. We do see more of this broken dune fencing. We're only about 2 or 3 rungs high. We're missing the fourth top, but not, very uneven, not even across the top like we saw with the fencing when Chrissie actually is running earlier in the movie. So this is clearly a freshly vandalized fence. Wampano Indian tribe purse that Chrissie was wearing, that Chrissie was, that is part of Chrissie's going to have her wallet in there. It's also going to have her sunglasses. And later on, we're going to see Martin Brody getting information about Chrissie Watkins into a report from the wallet that's in this bag. So let's move ahead. Let's keep going here. We're at 8:36. We have 24 seconds to go. Okay, we're going to do a jump cut now. We're now inside the Amity police station. inside Amity PD, right at the police station. We're going to have Cassidy. Tom Cassidy is going to be facing the camera on screen left. To the right side, we're going to see Hendricks in the back. Okay, so Hendricks is in the back over to the screen right in the background. What are we going to see here? We're going to see Cassidy holding a glass of water with Alka-Seltzer in it. That's why Alka-Seltzer is the bicarbonated soda fizz tablets that they would drop in back then if you had an upset stomach. We see Jeff Kramer as Deputy Hendricks. He dropped one in his cup, and he is now drinking it.
Well, you're up awful early.
Okay, let's go back really quick. So you see he drops the fizz in there, the tablet in. Maybe that's his second glass. So clearly we are upset stomach on these two gentlemen. Okay, and then what we're going to be introduced to is we're going to be introduced to the most famous police secretary in the cinema history, Polly, played by Peggy Scott. Now, Peggy Scott was just a local lady that was a local inhabitant of Edgartown. She did some acting for a local theater group, and she came out to try out. And according to Sherry Rhodes, Spielberg hired her right away. Just saw her, and without ever having to work any lines, just said, "Yep, she's perfect for the part." And she landed this role as Polly. We went over the history of Peggy Scott in episode 63, Polly's Printing. And that is going to be, that was one of the audio version of the Jaws Obsession. And that you can, if you want to listen to more about the history of Peggy Scott and also the character of Polly, this is, we go really in depth to this scene right here, because as we see she comes into the office, this is the outer office of Amity Police Department. So this is the outer office. We're going to see Chief Brody inside his office. So I think that Cassie is actually sitting at her desk. So if you were Polly and you were sitting at the desk, you would be looking. This is what you would see. You would see Chief inside his office, and you would see Cassidy sitting in front of you. That's what I think is going on here. One of the things we have to focus on is we have to see that, and what we talked about in episode 63 is that she's carrying her notepad and pencil. Okay, and obviously her purse. I don't think she's coming to work today. This is obviously very late in the day. Now we are going to do another timestamp on the next episode, so we're not going to get into that quite yet on this one. But let's play this in. What does she say when she comes in?
Well, you're up awful early. Is the chief in there?
And there it is. There's 9 minutes. So while you're up awful early, is the chief in there?
Well, chief. Well, you're up awful early. Is the chief in there?
Okay. Let's go to now that I've always said that Hendricks is the night deputy. The proof I have is if we go to the Jaws novel by Peter Benchley. If we go over to page 14, let's see here. Now, if we go over to page number 12, halfway down, second paragraph, Hendricks was convinced that as soon as he could get sprung from the godforsaken midnight to 8 shift, he would start to enjoy his work. Now, I know that the screenplay and the movie is very different from the novel, but in the novel, and I believe it was held over into the screenplay, one of the key elements that was factored in was Hendricks is the night deputy. And Amity obviously is very toned down. It's very pared down. It goes from a town on Long Island to its own island. So in the Book of Quint actually talks about the history of the police department. We're going to get into that in the next episode. But also what it talks about is that there was only one local deputy there, and it was a part-time gig. It was for the summer. And that if anything serious happened, they would send over a constable from Nantucket or from Martha's Vineyard, which would be the local sheriff there would come over, and he would be acting as that would be a keeper of the peace, so to speak. So there really was a sort of a lawless environment on Amity Island until this summer of 1974, when the Amity Police Department got a little bit bigger. And by getting a little bit bigger means they hired a permanent police chief. And now they have a permanent year-round deputy, and he works the nights. So Martin Brody is in the daytime. Hendricks comes on midnight to 8, and that's how it works during off hours. So when she says you're up awful early, means that she's coming in at about, we'll get to timestamps later. This is not going to be first thing in the morning when Hendricks would be there at 8 o'clock. When Polly shows up from either 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, Hendricks is usually leaving. She's seeing him as in like, you're up off early, like he is just getting to work now. So this is going to be around when she gets back from her lunch break, 11:30 or noon. And that is what the origin of the line, you're up awful early, is that she's not used to seeing Hendricks until later in the afternoon when she leaves around 4 or 5. That's when, or she knows that he's going to come to work later on. She's not used to seeing him at this hour. That's why she says, you're up awful early. Very interesting. And that's backed up by Peter Benchley in the novel Jaws, that Hendricks is the night deputy.
Well, Chief.
With that, that's the 9th minute of that we've arrived to, and we're going to have to say goodbye. And until the next episode, we'll get into that minute because we have some serious questions that we are going to be asking. We are going to say, what time are we in the office? We're gonna add that to the official Jaws timeline. The collection of Chrissie's remains. We got to talk about all that and the travel back to the office. It's all going to factor this big break in time, even though we just jump cut right to inside the police headquarters. There was about a good 3 hours there that they were all at the beach because of the Chrissie finding the body of Chrissie Watkins. But also, there's going to be a major revelation in this next minute, in minute number 9, that we're going to have to talk about. An understanding that the Brody story arc is starting in a way that we actually don't understand. And the dates on the form are going to carry a very, very significant clue. That is going to have a lot of weight going forward on how we're going to handle the expanded Jaws universe. That's all going to be in the next minute. So until then, I want to thank everyone for showing up, for listening, for taking your time to spend with us for one more minute in the Jaws Obsession. This has been Jaws Obsession episode 97, Expanded Jaws Universe minute number 8. Thank you very much for listening.
Show me the way to go home. I'm tired, I want to go to bed. I had a little think about an hour ago, and it's gotten right to my head. Wherever I may roam, by land or sea or home.
The movie Jaws is copyrighted property of Universal Studios. Any references and sampling from the movie Jaws in this episode is intended to fall within Section 107 of the Copyright Act. Copyrighted materials are fairly used for the purposes of criticism, comment, reporting, teaching, and research. The materials used here are protected by the fair use guidelines of Section 107 of the Copyright Act. All rights reserved to the copyright owners. So thank you very much for listening. This is very exciting. Remember, we have the audiobook for the Book of Quint, bestseller, Amazon Audible bestseller. If you haven't yet, please go give it a listen. You can get caught up, and you can actually follow along here with these Expanded Jaws Universe episode minutes here. Also, thank you very much for Eggertown Books, who have closed down for the month of January. They're redoing their floors, but they will open back up in February. And I believe there are still some hardcover books that are signed over at Eggertown Books. If you would like to purchase one, it is the number 3 best-selling book on Martha's Vineyard for the year 2025. So with that, I want to thank everybody. This is very exciting. I can't wait. We're going to try to get these episodes out. Again, with the weather, my workload has been really crazy working on the power lines up here, but I will try to get these episodes and move this ship forward one step at a time. It's very exciting where we're going. I can't wait. Looking forward to episode 100. Again, if you can, please like and subscribe to this episode on whatever broadcast you're listening on, and follow us over at Book of Quint over at Instagram.com. Until next episode, until the next minute, thank you very much. Show me the way to go home.